G'day fellas, and welcome to another video on the brand new DLC that we've got coming our way. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Mali, and in particular we're going to be talking about something that is a little bit strange. So I think this may just be something that the developers maybe overlooked, or something that they've done with their admin powers or their superhuman powers. But anyway, let's get into it. So this is one of the images that was available for the new civilization, the Mali. And as you can see, there are 3 landmarks in this picture. We've got a town center, we've got a mosque, a blacksmith, and then we've got 1, 2, 3 landmarks. Now, how do we know that these are 3 landmarks? Well, because the first one here, you can see it on the website. It's listed here as the Gold Barracks. The second landmark, which is this one over here, is listed as the Griot Bara. And then finally, that third landmark is going to be not on the website, but is instead going to be shown here. Now, how do we know that this is the landmark? So this one right here, how do we know that that's a landmark? How do we know that's not a building? We know that because we can very clearly see that it's got the golden animation that does appear when a landmark is constructed. And so because of that, we can determine that this is a Age 2 landmark, an Age 3 landmark, and an Age 4 landmark all in one picture, right? Well, hold the phone. Don't get too excited just yet. So let's just go back through the evidence that we've got. We know that these landmarks are mutually exclusive, okay? We know they got a lot of cows in them. But what I want you to do is take a look at the houses behind these landmarks. So one of the things that you can see is that there's a very clear design in the houses. Now, throughout the ages in Age of Empires, all the houses will be designed differently. You've got houses for the Dark Age, houses for the Feudal and the Castle Age that are together, and then houses in the Imperial Age. So, what am I getting over on, or what's the point I'm trying to establish? Well, these are our Dark Age houses here that you can see behind. And then our next picture, so once again, you can see these are the Feudal Age houses, or the Castle Age houses. They look the same, and you can see that they are quite a bit different here in their designs, the way that they are changed, and we can see that they are the same houses behind here. But take a look what happens after this landmark is completed. Let me see if I can find it. So, oh gosh, geez, I apologize. Do take note of the Imperial houses here as well. So this is before the landmark gets completed, and then after the landmark gets completed. You can see the houses change. They go from Feudal or Castle Age houses to Imperial houses. Now, how do we know that they're Imperial houses? Well, we know these are Imperial houses because we've got the Griot Bara here with the green roof, and we know that the Griot Bara is in Age 4, or it is the Age 4 landmark. So I guess that leaves the question, what is this landmark? Because realistically, I assume that this is going to be your Feudal Age landmark, right? It just makes sense. They're all mutually exclusive. Anyway, I've reached out to the devs. I haven't got a response back yet, so I'm just going live with the facts right now. I'm obviously Investigator Drongo. I got my big glasses on. But other than that, let's get into everything that we know about the Malians at this point in time, because they are a civilization that's a little bit different. I don't think we've got anything really like them. They kind of remind me a lot of, I guess the best way to say it would be kind of like the Mongols in a way. They're just got a bit of a weird playstyle. So let's talk about what the most likely way that you're going to be seeing the the Malians look to exploit things in the early game. So this is a picture here of an early Malian base. So we know that this is in the Dark Age because of the huts, the houses. They are very simplistic. They are intentionally designed that way so that a regular person could look at that and say, oh, yep, okay, that's probably pretty basic. Now, what are we seeing here? We've obviously got the town center, we've got an outpost, we've got a mill, which is a unique looking one. I've never seen a mill like this before. A couple of farms, a barracks, a mining camp, and of course, we have our one and only pit mine. The pit mine is a brand new, it is a unique building that is available only to the Malians. So this is it here. It sits on top of a gold mine. So think back to the Mongols, think back to the Uvu. It's the exact same thing. The Uvu goes on the stone mine, while the pit mine goes on the gold mine. Now, there's a couple of big differences here, and I feel like they may have drawn influence from Age of Empires 3 here, because we've seen something similar with the Ethiopians, and that's the Mountain Monastery. And you can see here it can produce coin and influence when placed on a mine. So I suspect that they may have taken a little bit of influence here. Oh, hold on a minute, Drongo. You're getting too Donzo'd. We know a couple of things about this and the way that it plays. So the pit mine doesn't subtract gold from the gold mine, which means that you can go and take that pit mine, you can put it on the pit mine through in your base, and you can leave it there, and it will be absolutely fine. The gold is not going to be going out. But the other thing to note is that with the pit mine, if I can find the right damn picture, there we go, is that villagers can actually gather the gold that is on the pit mine. So don't think like, oh, I'm dropping down a pit mine in my base, I'm not going to be able to gather gold. No, that's not true. So I don't know what happens when the gold mine is exhausted. That is, who knows? But I would suspect that probably the gold mine would just remain there, and the pit mine would continue trickling in its gold. Now we don't know what the rates are. We don't know what the cost is. I think there's a couple of ways that they can play it. They can either make it a bit more expensive and make it a bit more rewarding for you to have, or they can make it a bit cheaper and then make it. I would suspect, just looking at it, it's probably going to be going for the cheap route. I wouldn't be surprised if a pit mine is like 100 wood. And is the equivalent of maybe 1 villager in the Dark Age, and it has a very low hit points amount, just simply because of just because of the way that it looks. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about things other than the pit mines, because we're gonna look at how this all blends together. So the next thing that we get into is the Donzo. It is a unique unit available to the Malians. So what are the things that we know about the Donzo? Well, it's basically your spearman, but the key factor here is that it's actually a ranged unit. At least we know for 1 throw. So this was something that was mentioned on the live stream by one of the developers, Bert, and basically he said that they have 2 spears. The first spear, it's taken and it's thrown at an enemy, and then the second spear is what they're going to use. Now, one of the other things to note is that they've also got a shield. Now, spearmen don't have any armor, at least at the base level, so I'm thinking that for the Donzo, he might actually have some base level armor, maybe +1 melee armor, +1 ranged armor, something like that. And the reason why is because the Malians don't actually get, they don't get armored units. So I'm curious exactly how it's going to work with regard to the shield, but my suspicion is it's just going to be +1 melee armor, +1 ranged armor, something like that. So where do we go from here? We can see that. Oh, I guess this is the next point. We talk about the Dark Age for this civilization and what their focus is. So it's going to be based on the concept of cattle. Now, for anybody who's unfamiliar with cattle, obviously we can see it here, but it's not the first time that it's come out in the way that it's being used here. So the Malians are able to construct pit mines on top of gold deposits to automatically generate a steady stream of gold over the time, and can invest that gold back into their unique cattle food source. So this was something that happened in Age of Empires 3 with the Ethiopians once again. So it seems to be a very similar thing. Obviously Ethiopia, they're from the same continent, Africa. So you can see the way that it works in Age of Empires 3 is that your cattle spawns in not being fat. You know, as an example, if you were to look at an Australian cow, these are some of the biggest chonkers. These are 500 out of 500 food. But then if you're to take a malnourished cow, obviously, I mean, it could, you know what? I'm not even going to say an Australian cow. It could be any cow. And you fatten that bad boy up, that's going to be a fat cow. It's going to be 500 out of 500. But a malnourished cow, it's not going to be. And that's the whole idea. So what the way that it worked in Age of Empires 3 is that you had a livestock pen, and that you would fatten up those cows, and you could choose, did I want to eat them now or did I want to eat them later? And you did indeed pay gold for them. Now, speaking of livestock pens, here we go. So we can see very clearly here that there appears to be a livestock pen, cows gravitating towards livestock pens. So whether this fattens them up faster, now naturally they will fatten, but they will fatten a little bit slower without the livestock pen. If you're able to get them in the livestock pen, then it means that they should be fattening up a little bit faster. So what do we know? Well, we know that cows are available in the Dark Age. And how do we know that? Because we can see a cow right here. So I'm suspecting either the Malians start off with cows, or potentially they can train cows from the town center. Maybe they can train cows from the mill, but it's going to cost them gold. We know that it's going to cost them gold. So now you start to see a synergy for how the civilization is actually working, how it's actually playing, what you're blending, or what it's blending in, and what you're doing. So the idea is with the Malians, at least from what I can picture at this point in time, is a very extended, or at least this is going to be one of the possibilities. There might be, there is probably, a much better way to play them that we'll work out. But looking at the Dark Age synergies alone, you're going to start off by building a barracks. You're going to get your Donzo out ASAP. Your Donzo is going to move across the map. It's going to look to try and hit your enemy gold mine or stone. One of those two things. And you're going to continue pumping those bad boys out. While you're doing that, you're also going to be looking to take gold mines throughout the map. You might start off with the one closest to your base. You might look to take another 2 that are close to your base. And with that gold is going to start to trickle in. And you're going to be like, well, do I want to get a wheelbarrow upgrade? Well, not really. I don't need a mill. So perhaps you look to invest in cows. But perhaps you need to make the mill to get cows, so you have to do that. Then you start doing, the wheelbarrow plus the cows. Anyway, the cows will begin to fatten over time. And so what you're doing is you're investing that gold from those pit mines back into your food economy. And now you might be wondering, okay, but how the hell does this work? So I would once again say it's similar to the Mongols with regard to their pastures. Think about how the pasture, it spawns a sheep out of thin air, and then it drifts it back in towards the town center or wherever it is that you want to be gathering. The difference is that here the livestock will actually fatten over time. That's my suspicion as to how it's going to happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if the cows come out at 250 out of 400. And obviously they also get farms as well, but it's going to mean in the early game that you could very possibly see Malians as a civilization that doesn't need to leave its town center, that can just survive on farms for the early game. And I suspect that's going to be the case if you do look to move towards that Age 2 landmark. Let's see if we can find it. There it is. So what do we know about this landmark? Well, we don't know its name, but obviously one of the themes throughout all of these pictures is that we can see that there are cows around it in what appear to be pastures. So I'm going to assume that this landmark is going to increase the fattening rate on your cows. I suspect it might also reduce the cost of your cows, because we know that you're going to be paying gold for the cows. So I suspect it's going to be something along those lines. And it may also provide pastures. Now, with regard to those, well, not pastures, sorry, but I guess, you know what, they probably are pastures, but one of the things to note is that it doesn't actually, it's not exclusively tied to that landmark, the concept of a pasture. So here we can see that there is a pasture in the middle of this base, and there is absolutely no sign of that landmark around. So we know that it is not unique to that landmark, but rather it is unique to the civilization overall, which means that you don't have to go down that route, but at the same time, it means that you may consider going down that route if you want to focus more heavily on cows. And once again, we can see cows going there. So, maybe you're up against the French and maybe you want to stay in your base, maybe you're a bit scared of food control, that sort of thing. That's the direction you're going to go. Now, we don't know what the second landmark is as a possibility. We don't know what the second feudal landmark is, so we're just going to have to move on, because unfortunately we didn't get any glimpse of it in the clips at all. But moving in to the feudal age, we take a look at the first of the buildings. So it's going to be the unique building that is available to the Malians. This is a unique building, and it's called the Toll Outpost, which generates additional gold for passing caravans. So the way to think about this is not just as a typical building, but rather an actual outpost. And we know that because it shoots, it fires. Here you can see it with an emplacement. It's firing off a cannonball towards the ships that are on the shoreline. Actually, I take that back, towards the cavalry that's on the shoreline. So we know that, but obviously it also increases trade. So we see it generates additional gold. So who knows? Maybe you've got a pretty decent gold line for your traders, and now all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of toll outposts on there, and it just smashes your incomes crazy high, which is interesting because we've seen trade bonuses for both of these civilizations. Obviously, the Ottomans get a bonus for trade in the Imperial, or rather in the, it is in the Imperial Age, with one of their landmarks. So we do see it coming out through here once again with one of those mechanics. But we move on to the next unit. It's going to be the Musofadi warrior. Is a female warrior who excels at ambush and stealth tactics. So she has low health and armor, but it's offset by her high speed and damage. And they've got a hit and run ambush style of combat. Now, what it doesn't say here, this is something that was said in the interview, is that Bert described this as a somewhat men-at-arms unit. And he said that it can go into stealth anywhere on the map. Now, it's interesting that he describes it as a somewhat or described it as a men-at-arm unit, just simply because it says here that it's got low health and armor. So I don't know whether we're necessarily seeing older information here, or maybe Bert's playing on an older, older information as well. But that's interesting because this to me looks like your very typical Eagle or Shuttle Warrior Coyote from Age of Empires 3 or Age of Empires 2. It is that same concept. It's a fast-moving unit. It basically replaces the Horseman. That's the best way to think about it. I do suspect these might even have a cavalry tag on them, and that spearmen may counter them. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how that goes, and we move on to the next unit. It's not going to be anything exciting. It's just going to be the Archer. The Archer is available to the Malians. It's their only non-unique infantry or cavalry unit that is available. That's it. Everything else is unique, so they've gone all out with the uniqueness here. But we move on. Now we go into Age 3. So in Age 3, using their accelerated resources, they can start producing units in mass via their Gold Barracks landmark. Given timely reinforcements to expand their hit-and-run raiding and ambushes. Expanded technologies for the Sofa Horsemen, Archers, and Donzo mean even more tools to put pressure on their opponents. For Archers, the unique upgrade Poisoned Arrows becomes available, causing arrows to inflict additional damage over time. So obviously a lot of questions about what's been said here. You know, does Poisoned Arrows, bypass armor? All these sorts of questions. But I think the big question is obviously, how does the Gold Barracks work? Now, my suspicion is it's probably going to be batch training. So we've already seen an Age 3 landmark that would be similar to this, and that is for the Holy Roman Empire. That is, of course, the Burger Palace. Now, the Burger Palace acts as 5 barracks, and you've got individual units that you can click out, bam, 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 bam. Now, you'd obviously prefer that over batch training. Batch training is having the ability to train 5 units at once. But the key difference here would be that I think these units are going to be cheaper. That's the way I think they're going to do it. I think they're going to go for cheaper units, and I think it's going to be a batch train option for you with the Gold Barracks, just simply from what they said, that it gives timely reinforcements to expand the hit and run and raiding ambushes. The timely way kind of makes me think, it's going to be 5 units coming out. Now, the next thing that we talk about is this little bad boy down here who is hidden in the image. So this is going to be the Sofa Horseman. Now, one of the things that they did say is that there is a lack of armored units, but this guy does look armored. It looks like a knight replacement. So I think this is going to be an Age 3 unit, but obviously no confirmation yet. We can see that it is mentioned here, expanded technologies for the Sofa Horseman. The stable is enabled in the 2nd age for the Malians, so it could be a 2nd age unit, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. Next up, the Javelin Thrower. The Javelin Thrower is a skilled skirmisher that replaces the crossbowman for the Malians. As an excellent counter to ranged units, they deal bonus damage and have additional range when compared to archers. So let's just have a listen to this. So it is a Javelin Thrower. It's a skilled skirmisher. It replaces the crossbow. So obviously the crossbow, it is a unit that excels against armored units. It does extra damage against your men-at-arms. It does extra damage against your knight. But now all of a sudden, we've got an excellent counter to ranged units. So we've got a ranged unit that does damage to ranged units. So, all of the people out there that are spamming, the crazy amounts of ranged units that we see, obviously lots of archers and whatnot, the longbowmen, the chukunu, well, your days are numbered, let's just say that much. But I guess in addition to that means, perhaps it's quite a good counter in the late game to gunpowder units, potentially. Could be an option. But it's very interesting. This is going to be the first type of unit that we've got that is like this, the first style, because Age of Empires 4, unlike Age of Empires 2, is lacking that skirmisher unit. In Age of Empires 2, you've got your scout, you've got your the equivalent of the men-at-arms, you've got the equivalent of the spearman, you've got the equivalent of the archer, but you do not have this unit here. This is the skirmisher. So it's great to see this Age of Empires 2 unit is coming to Age of Empires 4. We get a good little picture here of everything that is available to you as the Malians. I excuse the pixels. So we've got battering ram over here and traction trebuchets down here. These aren't the normal trebuchets. They're a little bit smaller, so they do have access to the traction trebuchets. So following that same theme that these guys are quite close to the Mongols. Continue moving forward, and now we move into Age 4. So in Age 4, Malians can start creating global buffs through their Griot Bara landmark, giving the player different options to increase their economy, additional firepower to add to their siege attacks, or increase their military production to further hit their opponents from all directions. So we know that with this one, so they've said increase your economy. So what does that look like? This is what it looks like, baby. And it looks pretty awesome. I actually really love the look of it. We've got a sort of glowing aura effect, and you can see there's this little farm thing at the top. So I suspect, now we know that it's global, okay? They specifically mentioned, they said it's a global effect is what it's doing. So this is something similar that was in Age of Empires 3, once again. It is the concept of the fire pit or the community plaza, which would provide global buffs to whatever it is you're doing, whether you wanted to increase your production rate, which is what it did, increase your attack damage. That was one of the possibilities that it had. but it didn't have anything to do with economy like this, so one of the exceptions to the rule. But still, it is. I'm curious to see the way that it works. I suspect it's probably just going to be, you know, like plus 15%. Or no, you know what? I reckon they'll do much more. It'll be like plus 25% to all resources being gathered. It'll be something like that. It'll be incredibly powerful. But at the same time, it'll be about choosing when you use it and choosing how you use it, because you can see that there's 3 different options that they've mentioned here. So you can increase your economy, you can add to your siege attacks, or you can increase military production. So it's going to be that whole, you know, reduce the barracks training time by 50%, or increase siege attacks or siege damage. Maybe it's like damage to buildings for your units by 100%, and increase, and the same thing with the traction trebuchets. That could be one of the options to help you out with those sorts of sieges. And then of course the economy. So you're always going to be focusing on that whenever you're not doing one of those other things. So you're going to be you're going to always need to come back and change this. But we move on and take a look at one of the other unique units. So it's here, this little bad boy right here, which replaces the hand cannoneer. So it's called the Mercer gunner. So it joins the fray, giving the Malians another deadly force, making use of stealth. Through their own unique ability, they're able to activate stealth for a short period of time, even outside of stealth forests. So one of the key differences here compared to the Musofadi warrior is that the Musofadi warrior is, my understanding, able to stay in stealth. Whereas it sounds like here we've got the Musofadi gunner, and I think I said one of these bad guys. It's not a bad guy, it's a bad girl. So I think that this is just going to be a short amount of time, you know, maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds, something like that. It's not going to be throughout the game you're able to have this. Now, what else do we know? Well, we know a couple of other things. So we know that in addition to the landmarks that we've seen today, that there is another landmark. Now, I'm not 100% confident whether this is a landmark or whether this is a wonder. It looks quite big, and I had a lot of difficulty determining the size of this building. I've tried my best to see it, but it makes it very difficult, just simply because this mining camp's actually one tile away from the stone camp, or rather the stone outcropping. So I'm not sure whether this is going to be a wonder or whether this is going to be a landmark, but essentially there is a landmark called the Hunter Fortress, and the Hunter Fortress stealths every single infantry unit around it. And that sounds kind of wild. It sounds absolutely wild. Well, either way, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on the Malians. I don't know about you guys, but I'm curious to know what you think. Do you think the developers have kind of mucked it up here? Was it just, you know, somebody playing with God mode in a skirmish game, and they accidentally took a picture and it goes against something that I guess my autism has found out? Who knows? Well, let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and of course, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.